opinion, when you cannot imagine an alternative to the present way of doing things, you're enslaved. When you're held captive to the status quo. And isn't that the way so many of us feel? It's just, there's no way to change this government. It's a juggernaut that has a life of its own. I certainly am, enslaved at that level. My imagination does not even allow me to think it could be different, which paralyzes you. You become captive to the status quo. And how many of us are not the same way in relationship to the church? It has a life of its own, it's on a course of its own, it's concerned with its own constituencies and job descriptions and maintaining itself, and we cannot even imagine a different alternative. In that sense, I suppose all of us in this room have to admit that at some level we're enslaved. It's just too risky, too demanding, too impossible to imagine a different way of doing it. And that's what the people of Israel could not imagine, that there could be any other way. So it starts with a Moses, with an individual getting the big, spacious experience, but then knowing that it's not a private experience. If I had to name the really darkest side, and it might surprise you, and maybe it's not even true, but I'm going to try it, of where Western Christianity is at and why it can't get it, why it can't find its power and its potential, I would say that more than anything else, it's because of the lie of individualism. You see, that's precisely what religion tells you you're not. Back in 1960, the man who, for so many of us, has named the integration of action and contemplation, or the outer and the inner world, better than anybody, Thomas Merton, in his book Disputed Questions, 1960, talk about a seer, he said the concept of the self as an individual, as an autonomous, independent ego outside of inherent relatedness is, and I quote him, basically an economic concept with a pseudo-spiritual and moral facade. The big cover for it, and we've fed into it, is this business about getting my private soul saved. Me going to heaven. Did it ever strike you that that's about the best disguised narcissism you can think of? And we've let centuries of Catholics and Protestants get away with it, thinking that's even first level enlightenment, thinking that's even first level spirituality or transformation. The ego, the private self, can be totally in charge, totally in control, and worried about its self-securing, self-validating, self-legitimating level. That's the lie at the core of Western individualistic Christianity. And why I want to say that the doctrine of the body of Christ, the experience of participatory union with God and with one another, is the trump card, the political trump card of Western Christianity, which it has yet to throw on the table. Because we're trying to solve this whole thing out of an individualistic ethos of getting individual people saved, individual people thinking good about themselves, thank you. And we don't realize that the very person that we're dealing with there is outside of what I would call the Trinitarian flow, where you inherently know that it's not about me. And my life is not about me. I'm being used. I am participating in something bigger than myself. Brothers and sisters, the price we paid for that is carrying privately, which you can't carry, both the weight of sin and the weight of glory. Terribly inflated egos and terribly defeated egos alternately, sort of every hour. It's like we jump back and forth. That's all the private ego can do, is feel terribly bad about how unworthy you are.